The member for Hughes has the call.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to speak today on the Migration Amendment, Visa Revalidation and Other Measures Bill of 2016. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to respond to comments made by the member for Griffith during this debate. Now, the member for Griffith at the start of her speech referred to a Trump-style Muslim ban, and then throughout her contribution to this debate sort of criticised the minister here in Australia could have similar Trump-style powers. Now, this is a very important point, Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to completely rebut what the member for Griffith says and show it is completely false. Firstly, the change that the US have made to their visa policy is not a ban. It is a 90-day suspension. And, Deputy Speaker, it is not a Muslim ban. It applies to 7 countries, Deputy Speaker, 7 countries only. And those countries are Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan and Libya. By any stretch of the imagination, Deputy Speaker, those countries are anything but democracies. Anything, Deputy Speaker, but countries that have significant issues with security in their nations, significant issues with terrorism being inflicted upon their own people in those countries. Now, Deputy Speaker, it only applies to those 7 countries. The rest of the Islamic world, Deputy Speaker, the Islamic world is estimated around about 1.6 billion people around the world. So if you look at all the countries that are not affected by this ban, countries such as Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Turkey, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco and Saudi Arabia, and I could go on and on, Deputy Speaker, but it's 88% of people of Islamic faith are not affected by the temporary suspension that is made to the US visa policy. Now, I'm not here, Deputy Speaker, to defend that policy or say whether it's right or wrong. What I am here to do is to point out that to call it a Muslim ban, as the member for Griffith did at that dispatch box, is misleading and it is false. And it is not fit of an Australian member of Parliament to come into this chamber and make such misleading statements. Now, Deputy Speaker, another reason why I'll tell you it is false as a Muslim ban. People in Iraq, whether they are Christians, whether they are Mandaeans, whether they what religion they are, Deputy Speaker, are affected by that temporary suspension. But someone of the Islamic faith, Deputy Speaker, that is from Indonesia or from Egypt or from Pakistan or from Nigeria is not affected. So when you can have a person that is of Mandaean faith that is affected by the ban and a person that of Islamic faith that is not affected, how can it possibly be called a Muslim ban? Deputy Speaker, this is very dangerous, and this false description and referring that this is something that could be done here in Australia actually causes division, it causes hatred, and it's based on a falsehood. And I say shame on the member for Griffiths. And I would invite her to come back into this chamber and to correct the record and to apologise to this House and to apologise to this nation. Because, Deputy Speaker, we have a difficult enough issue as it is in the world at the moment with terrorism. Deputy Speaker, we do not need members of the Australian Parliament making false statements in this House that only cause more division and more tension. Now, Deputy Speaker, the specifics of this bill grant a 10-year application that someone from China can have a 10-year visa to come to Australia. And this, Deputy Speaker, is something that we should all welcome very much. We've seen the growth of China, Deputy Speaker, something that we have seen in our lifetime. Hundreds of millions of people lifted out of poverty, Deputy Speaker, into the middle class with the ability to travel. And we should never forget, Deputy Speaker, why that rise out of poverty has occurred. It's occurred, Deputy Speaker, because not through aid or special things, Deputy Speaker, it is simply because the Chinese government, after years of going down the communist track, of collectivisation of industry, allowing governments to control everything, Deputy Speaker, they saw the light and realised it would be best for their economy if they would open it up to market forces, to allow people to own property, Deputy Speaker. And we have seen in our lifetime the greatest uplift of people out of poverty probably in human history. And Deputy Speaker, that is a great bonus for our country, because there are hundreds of millions of people, Deputy Speaker, in China now that are a market that we can attract to become tourists to Australia, to create more jobs and more wealth in this country. So anything we can do, Deputy Speaker, to make it easier for those people to get a visa, to make it easier for them to get a longer 10-year visa, Deputy Speaker, is something we all should be in favour of. And we would hope, Deputy Speaker, that when those tourists come to Australia, if they have that 10-year visa, Deputy Speaker, we just don't want them to come once. We want them to become multiple times, time after time after time after time. Because, Deputy Speaker, we have so many wonderful tourist attractions for people to see in this country. And, Deputy Speaker, just an example of some of the wonderful tourist examples that we have in this country. Over the recent Christmas break, Deputy Speaker, I had the opportunity to take my small kayak out onto Port Hacking. And Deputy, yes, I know the members, the Minister at the Chamber there actually defeated him once in a kayak race, if I remember correctly. But anyhow, I do digress. And Deputy Speaker, now Port Hacking is, of course, Sydney's southern waterways. Deputy Speaker, the water there was absolutely pristine. You could see the bottom to 2 to 3 metres. You could see the sandy bottom, you could see the fish. And this, Deputy Speaker, all within a short distance of our Sydney CBD. These are the tourist attractions that I have in my electorate for people from China. We also have, Deputy Speaker, down on the beaches in the National Park. Gary Beach, Deputy Speaker, a most magnificent place within the National Park. And of course, Deputy Speaker, every weekend now, that is, so many Chinese tourists come to experience Gary Beach and go down to visit the figure-8 rock pools down further. But, Deputy Speaker, it is also important within this bill that not only that we have the 10-year revalidation period, but our Minister actually has the ability to make some of the changes that are needed. If a visa needs to be cancelled, Deputy Speaker, or a revalidation needs to be cancelled, the Minister surely in this day and age must have this discretion. And for members of the Labor Party to go on how terrible this is and then to link it, Deputy Speaker, to falsely link it to what the member for Griffith described for a Muslim ban, really is a disgrace to this Parliament. We need, Deputy Speaker, everything we do to encourage, Deputy Speaker, to stop the division, to stop the false division that we have. And unfortunately, the member for Griffiths failed in her task today. Now, Deputy Speaker, the other issue that we hope to see in years to come, that this 10-year visa can be extended to many other countries. Deputy Speaker, I would like to see in years to come this extended to many other countries that we deal with. Because our tourism, Deputy Speaker, is such an important sector for this economy. If we have to look at where our strengths will be in this economy in years to come, Deputy Speaker, where will we be in 10 or 15 years' time if we do not fix our corporate tax rate? Where will we be, Deputy Speaker, in 10 or 15 years' time if our electricity costs are 2 and 3 times those of our major competitors? What industries will we have that will drive the prosperity of this nation in years to come? And, Deputy Speaker, if you look at those industries, clearly our tourism industry is one of the most important industries that we have, because it creates, Deputy Speaker, more opportunities for hotel construction. So it gives jobs, Deputy Speaker, to all the tradesmen, to the builders, to the carpenters, to the electricians, to the plumbers, to the landscapers, constructing tourism, Deputy Speaker. Not to mention our food suppliers, Deputy Speaker. Though every Chinese tourist or overseas tourist that comes into this country needs to be fed, Deputy Speaker. And we have some of the best produce, some of the best wines, Deputy Speaker, that they can sample when they come here. All increases the demand for the supply of goods from Australia, and therefore, Deputy Speaker, increases employment opportunities and wealth creation opportunities for this country. Deputy Speaker, so I hope that at the conclusion of this debate, or sometimes during today, that the member for Griffith reconsiders her words. She considers that the division that she created, the potential division that she created by her false statement, by her false labelling of the changes in the US visa system, I hope she reconsiders and comes back in and says that she may have misspoke, Deputy Speaker, and says that she misspoke, corrects the record, Deputy Speaker, because we cannot allow this here in our Australian Parliament. It is one thing for some journalistic rags to make these false statements, Deputy Speaker. It is a completely another thing for elected members of the Australian House of Representatives to come into this Parliament and to say such things. So I hope, Deputy Speaker, that the member for Griffith reconsiders her approach to this and takes the opportunity that this Parliament allows to come back into this Parliament and correct the record. With that, Deputy Speaker, I will conclude my speech on this bill. At least I should say that I commend this bill to the House.